This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
Oh my goodness, might we be on the precipice of something of meaning happening in the case of Ellen Greenberg? Something meaningful in the investigation. Could it actually take place? We're going to get into that because there's a federal investigation that has been opened. And it's not necessarily into the actual events of the death itself. It's how it was handled, which is going to be interesting. Or it's a big false red flag to make people shut up and go away and say, see, they're doing something. And then they'll check the boxes and say, see, we did something. And nothing happens. Don't hold your breath. A 27-year-old teacher was found dead with 23 stab wounds, 10 of them to the back of her neck, a knife buried 4 inches into her chest. The official ruling was that she unalived herself. I hate using that word, but in the interest of this message getting out to more people, that's the word we're going to use. For 15 years, her parents fought every level of Pennsylvania's justice system. They were told she did this to herself. Courts called the investigation deeply flawed, but couldn't help them. The original medical examiner eventually even recanted his own ruling. The city didn't. The city still said, nah, we're good. You said that once. We're going to stick with that. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office has entered the chat, and they're not investigating how Ellen Greenberg died. They're investigating whether the people who handled her case committed crimes. This isn't a cold case review. This is a corruption probe, and it reportedly reaches all the way to the office of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Ellen Greenberg was a Penn State graduate, a first-grade teacher at Junota Park Academy in Philadelphia. She was 27 years old, engaged to a man named Samuel Goldberg, living in the Manayuk neighborhood. By every count, she loved her students, had an active social life, and was planning her wedding. Then on January 26 of 2011, a blizzard hit Philadelphia, a nor'easter, big one. Ellen left work early and went home. Around 6:30 that night, Goldberg called 911. You can listen to the call online. It's one of the craziest, weirdest, most suspicious-sounding 911 calls you'll ever hear. And I got to say, Sam has maintained his innocence through all this. He's never been charged with anything whatsoever. It's a weird call. Sometimes people act weird, though. He said he'd gone downstairs to the gym, came back, found the apartment door locked. When he got back up, it was locked from the inside with a swing bar latch, one of those, hotel-style locks. He said he called and texted Ellen for about 40 minutes, no answer, so he broke down the door. He found her on the kitchen floor, slumped against the cabinets with a 10-inch serrated knife lodged in her chest. Listen to the phone call if you haven't. Seriously, listen to that 911 call. It will haunt you for the rest of your life. Not because it's traumatizing, it's because it's so weird. Oh, wait. Oh, gosh, there's a knife. She fell on a knife. Huh? You didn't realize there's a knife protruding from her chest for the first how many minutes of the phone call? And you're right there? She fell on a knife and it's protruding. She fell on the knife. None of it makes sense. Unless you're a profoundly stupid individual, which may be the case. I don't know. It's better than murderer. "20 stab wounds, 10 to the back of her neck and the base of her skull. Like people do to themselves. Oh, wait, they don't, ever. 11 bruises in various stages of healing, meaning they didn't all happen at that exact second. No defensive wounds. The blood had coagulated. It was running horizontally from her nose to her ear, which tells you she was likely lying flat when she bled out, not seated the way she was found. So, again, as I've said before in this case, you'd have to believe Ellen Greenberg was the first documented case of a zombie. Because if you also look at the medical examiner's reports, part of her spine was severed. And there were allegedly post-mortem stab wounds. She's a zombie. Okay. That's the official report. The next morning, Assistant Medical Examiner Marion Osborne performed the autopsy. He saw the wounds, and he did what a medical examiner who saw what he saw would rule: a homicide. And the Philadelphia Police Department immediately pushed back. Publicly. They cited Ellen's mental issues, and they said they were leaning towards suicide. Within weeks, Osborne changed his ruling then. No explanation was given to Ellen's parents. They found out from media reports that their daughter and her death had been reclassified. Goldberg has never been named a suspect. He has never been charged with any crime. He has maintained that Ellen's death was a result of mental illness. In 2024, he told CNN in his only public statement about the case, quote, "Mental illness is very real and has many victims. I hope and pray that you never lose someone you love like I did to a terrible disease, and then to be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death." Well, we are not accusing you of causing her death. We're just saying this is really weird. What happened? We're saying, how did someone stab themselves 20 times? 20 sometimes in the back. I mean, this, how? Because, yeah, no doubt mental illness is real. And it's a horrible thing to deal with as a human being or the partner of someone with it. But this doesn't explain away that. So what's going on here? And why was there no investigation? Why was the crime scene cleaned up as quickly as it was? Why were her digital devices taken? I mean, there's so many pieces with this case. And it could all be innocent. A really weird coincidence and amalgamation of stupidity and things that look very criminal, but have never been ruled criminal. But you could go, this is weird. Or it's just nothing at all, and it just looks weird. Maybe that's what it is. I'll let you guys decide. The institutional failures did start to stack up like evidence nobody wanted to collect. And by the time homicide detectives returned to the apartment to conduct a proper investigation, it had already been professionally cleaned. One day after Ellen died, the police had given permission for the cleanup. The crime scene was sanitized before investigators could process it. But the cleaning wasn't even the biggest problem. On January 27th of 2011, a man named James Schwartzman entered Ellen's apartment. Schwartzman is Samuel Goldberg's uncle. He also is one of the most powerful attorneys in Pennsylvania, chairman of the Judicial Conduct Board, president, judge of the Court of Judicial Discipline, the guy who oversees misconduct cases against other judges. Schwartzman allegedly removed Ellen's personal laptop, her work laptop, her iPhone, credit cards belonging to both Ellen and Sam. His representative later said police gave him permission. Maybe they did. But police then had to issue a search warrant to get the electronics back, allegedly. The chain of custody, the legal integrity of the evidence, it was already compromised. Somebody else had access to all of those materials before the investigators did, after the crime, by choice. You know, like you do when you show up to your non-blood relative, not even niece yet, home, and you take all of her digital devices after she's murdered. Oh, yeah, they said they wanted to get stuff together for the funeral. You know, a nice little picture show or something. Let's, the man who really didn't have much of a relationship at all with Ellen. Making sure to get all those pieces to make a lovely PowerPoint. Did they ever use it for any of that? I'm curious. Did they ever come up with the slideshow or the picture project or whatever the hell they were trying to make it sound like they were doing with those devices? Or did they just disappear and then they went back, to police. Again, to be clear, neither Goldberg nor Schwartzman have been accused of any wrongdoing in connection with Ellen's death. I'm not accusing them of any wrongdoing. I'm just saying this is odd. It's odd. It's interesting. It makes you wonder. I'd love to see the tribute that you put together to Ellen Greenberg after her brutal unaliving by herself that you put together using her digital devices. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the tribute you made. Let us see it. Let us all watch it. It's a great tribute to her that shows that, that's all that was. Why not? Oh, there isn't one? I don't know. I don't know if there is or not. Why did you take all those devices? Well, the federal government's looking into that now. Because we've been screaming, this is insane! Those computers would become central to the case because years later, when the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office was asked to explain why they believed Ellen killed herself, they pointed to suicide-related searches allegedly found on the laptop, terms like suicide methods and painless suicide. Here's the problem. The original 2011 investigation report said nothing indicative of that being found on Ellen's computer. The AG spokesperson admitted they couldn't say if anyone, police or prosecutor, had ever looked at that device at the time, and the devices had been in the possession of Samuel Goldberg's uncle after he removed them from the unsecured crime scene. He was given permission. So I don't want to paint this as like they went in unscrupulously. It's like, damn, opportunity knocks. Can we take these? Unexperienced officers? Yes, go ahead. Okay, great, thank you. They got permission. They didn't steal them. They didn't do anything illegal. I want that to be clear. This was bad police work 101 that allowed for some of these steps to even be taken. And if I'm not saying there, but if you were wanting to cover up a crime scene, if you wanted to cover up something that happened that you don't want people to figure out, your digital devices are what you're going to go to. And if you don't have to pull any strings to get those said devices, you just go, do you mind if we take these? And they're like, sure. Well, that was easy. And it might just be as simple as the explanation is. And again, it may not have been for any sort of unscrupulous activity either. It just certainly lends itself to that if that's where the narrative goes. But we don't know. We don't know. It's weird, though. No one has independently verified when those searches were made or by whom, and the chain of custody was broken from the jump. Now, let's talk about what doesn't fit in the unaliving narrative by herself, because there's a lot. Ellen's psychiatrist, the one she'd recently started seeing for anxiety, told police she felt overwhelmed at work, but there was, quote, never any feelings of, thoughts that she was going to harm herself. That same psychiatrist documented bruises on Ellen's that were, quote, consistent with domestic abuse, sufficient to account for her anxiety. Again, to be clear, no one has ever been accused of abusing Ellen, and the source of those bruises was never officially determined. Ellen didn't leave a note. One of the stab wounds penetrated her spinal column. A former employee of the medical examiner's office testified under oath that 2 cuts to Ellen's spine were from a real stab wound, not something caused during the autopsy, which has been tried to argue the other way. If Ellen sustained that injury while she was still alive, she would have been incapacitated. She physically could not have inflicted the remaining wounds on herself. Again, it kind of points to, well, she's the first known zombie. At least one wound, according to forensic analysis, was reportedly inflicted after Ellen was already dead. Again, making it impossible for it to be the unaliving of oneself. Unless you're a zombie. Which again, maybe this is the first documented zombie case. Wow. Insane, isn't it? And there's the doorman problem. The medical examiner who changed the ruling to suicide, Marlon Osborne, testified that his determination depended on information police gave him. Specifically, that Samuel Goldberg had been accompanied into the apartment building by the building's doorman. That was his basis for believing the door was actually locked from the inside. It's critical to ruling out foul play. And here's the deal. It's a line of shit. Sworn depositions show the doorman did not go upstairs with Goldberg. He offered to call police. Goldberg declined. Osborne's own testimony. If there was any doubt about Goldberg being escorted by the doorman, quote, this cannot be a suicide. The doorman was not there to witness him breaking down the door, according to the doorman. So when your alibi is the doorman saw me break down the door, it was locked from the inside, and the evidence doesn't quite show that. And the doorman says, no. You kind of got a hiccup in the story there. I wonder what that means. So let's trace how this case moved through the system, shall we? So we can understand how we got here. In 2018, Ellen's parents reached out to the Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. He'd actually represented them as a private attorney years earlier, back when they first started looking for answers. Now he was the DA, so he had a conflict of interest. He handed the case to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. That office was run by Josh Shapiro. Shapiro's team sat on it for over a year. Then only after the Philadelphia Inquirer started pressing for answers, public pressure, his spokesman, a guy named Joe Grace, announced they'd conducted a thorough investigation. The evidence, Grace said, supported suicide. He pointed that those laptop searches, case closed. In 2022, internet sleuths started digging into the connections between Josh Shapiro and the Schwartzman family. Same legal circles, same community networks, same synagogue, according to some reports. When confronted, the AG's office said they didn't believe there was an actual conflict of interest, but they transferred the case to the Chester County District Attorney's office anyway to avoid, quote, the appearance of a conflict. Chester County's investigation went about as well as you'd expect. In November of 24, they announced that they couldn't prove a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The case was moved to inactive status. Their independent forensic expert, an undergraduate degree in entomology, that's the study of insects, by the way, no medical training. The Greenberg family attorney called the investigation extremely limited and constrained. That's lawyer speak for they barely tried. Then here's where it gets interesting, because even when the courts ruled against Ellen's parents, the judges made damn sure everyone knew what they thought of this case. In 2024, the Commonwealth Court issued a 2-1 decision siding with the city on technical legal grounds, but their 39-page opinion was scorched earth indictment of everyone who touched the investigation. Direct quote here. This court is acutely aware of the deeply flawed investigation of the victim's death by the City of Philadelphia Police Department detectives, the City of Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, and the Medical Examiner's Office. They wrote that opinion. They said, in the interest of justice and with hopes that equity may one day prevail for the victim and her loved ones. The judges saw it. They just couldn't fix it. Then in February 25, the city finally settled with the Greenbergs $650,000 in an agreement that the medical examiner's office would conduct an independent review of Ellen's death. All right, before that settlement, something significant happened. Marlon Osborne, the original pathologist who'd changed his ruling from homicide to suicide 14 years earlier, signed a sworn statement. He said he no longer believed Ellen's death should be classified as that she unalived herself. The man who made the call recanted. So in October 25, Philadelphia's chief medical examiner, Dr. Lindsay Simon, delivered her independent review. 32 pages. She examined autopsy photos and records. She reviewed deposition and police files, or at least she claims she did. She watched the Hulu documentary that had just come out about the case. She found things that had never been documented before. 20 additional bruises, 3 more stab wounds. The totals were now 31 bruises and 23 stab wounds. And you think, all right, Bring us some levity here. What do you got? Still, she did it herself. Her reasoning was that Ellen had anxiety about work. You know, like everybody who has anxiety, they just do this. She was worried about grades she had to submit. The wounds were admittedly unusual, but Ellen would be capable of inflicting those injuries herself. And the ones that she couldn't explain, you know, like the ones where you sever your spinal cord, like, well, maybe that happened in the autopsy. Maybe when they were doing it, they ripped a little bit more than they were expecting to. And those, yeah, maybe, you know, it could, maybe, if, you know. When you can't explain it, just, you know, magic. Dr. Simon attributed 31 bruises to, quote, incidental contact sustained during activities of daily living, including her work as a first-grade teacher. She suggested the spinal wounds might have been caused during the autopsy, a theory rejected by the city's own neuropathologist and every credible expert who's looked at this case. She did not examine the preserved piece of Ellen's spinal cord still sitting in storage at the ME's office. The family attorney called the report a deeply flawed attempt to justify a premeditated conclusion and an embarrassment to the city, because it was. And now the whole thing has shifted again. Somebody shook the snow globe. According to sources cited by the Philadelphia Inquirer, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern Division of Pennsylvania has issued subpoenas to multiple agencies: the Philadelphia Police Department, the Medical Examiner's Office, the Law Department, the District Attorney's Office, and the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, the one Josh Shapiro ran when his team closed this case in 2019. Well, good luck, because Josh is now the governor of your state where you're doing this investigation. The federal investigation isn't about how Ellen died. And it's not a state investigation. I should be clear there, because I don't want to insinuate that. It's a federal investigation into a state where the person who was the AG is now the governor. A person who may have control over what you get to see and what you don't. The federal investigation isn't about how Ellen died. It's about what happened to her. Sources say prosecutors are examining whether the mistakes made in handling this case rise to the level of criminal corruption. None of the agencies have confirmed receiving subpoenas. The U.S. Attorney's Office gave the standard response: they can either confirm or deny the existence of an investigation. And the Greenberg family's attorney, Joseph Padraza, called it a dream come true. He says they've wanted federal involvement for years. Federal prosecutors don't issue subpoenas to 5 different agencies spanning 15 years because they're curious. If this is real, and multiple sources are saying it is, they're building something. The potential charges on the table include obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, official misconduct, civil rights violations, and conspiracy. If coordination is proven between agencies, federal RICO charges aren't off the table. And here's the thing people forget: there's no statute of limitations on homicide. If the federal investigation proves corruption and how this case was handled and the manner of deaths, if the manner of death gets reclassified, someone could still be charged for what happened to Ellen Greenberg in January of 2011. Now, keep in mind, Governor Josh Shapiro is running for re-election in 2026. His former office is now reportedly under federal scrutiny. His former spokesperson, Joe Grace, the guy who cited those laptop searches as justification for closing the case, is now the spokesperson for Philadelphia Mayor Cheryl Parker. The connections in this case run deep. The feds are pulling the thread. For 15 years, Josh and Sandy Greenberg have been told their daughter stabbed herself 23 times, including 10 times in the back of her own neck. And that's just how it is. Every door closed, every appeal denied, every review reaffirmed what common sense rejected. The court called the investigation deeply flawed. The original pathologist recanted. A new review found wounds nobody had documented, and still, she did it. Now, federal prosecutors are asking questions that Pennsylvania wouldn't. Did the people responsible for finding the truth decide not to look for it? Did institutions protect themselves instead of seeking justice for a 27-year-old woman who couldn't speak for herself? Ellen Greenberg taught first grade. She was engaged. She had her own life in front of her. And on a snowy night in January of 2011, she ended up dead on her kitchen floor with a knife in her chest and wounds that defy every reasonable explanation for an unaliving of oneself. 15 years later, the questions remain. And now, finally, someone with subpoena power is asking why nobody in Pennsylvania seemed interested in answering them. We shall continue this conversation off the air in the comments section. Join me. Shall you? We'll nod to good old Adam the Woo there. YouTube is where you can leave your thoughts. Hidden Killers of Tony Bruschi, find us there. Or on our Substack, hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is in the description and on the bottom of your screen right now if you're watching us on YouTube. Love to get your thoughts on this case. Weigh in, and we'll continue this. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, specifically, if you got a few moments, maybe right now, if you're sitting there like, hey, that was interesting reporting. A review on Apple Podcasts would be greatly appreciated. Just a couple seconds, couple kind words, or your thoughts on the case, whatever. Leave it there. We greatly appreciate that. That helps us a lot to signal to others that you're finding our reporting valuable, and it lets other folks find us. So it's a way to support the program at absolutely zero cost to you. And we thank you for that in advance. All right. We're going to continue our conversation off the air in the comment section on YouTube and Substack. Until then, my name is Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.